Okay, we continue to the second part of this module. This is 2 out of 3 videos. We now go to the basis for supply. What is supply? Supply is the number of goods and services that sellers are willing and able to sell at different price levels. And just like the law of demand, the law of supply also has something to do with price and quantity, but this time it is quantity supplied and not quantity demanded. The law of supply states that as price increases, the number of items that sellers are willing to sell increases as well. So QS increases. And as price decreases, sellers will be selling less of the item. Ceteris paribus. As you can see, the arrows are on the same direction. And this signifies now that the relationship between the price and the quantity supplied is direct or positive. Price and QS have a direct relationship. And this tells us that they move in the same direction. But why do they have the same direction, or why do they have a positive relationship? Just put yourself in the shoe of an entrepreneur. When do you like, what situation do you like better? When the item that you're selling can now be sold at a higher price, or when the item that you're selling can only be sold at a lower price nowadays? Assuming all the other factors are constant, assuming that you don't have to spend more for the cost, or there is no change in the technology of in your company, or maybe there is no change in weather or season. It's just that you can now sell the item at a higher or lower price. So which situation is better for you? Obviously, the one that you will likely prefer is the situation wherein you can sell the item at a higher price. Okay? So if the item can be sold at a higher price, that means that you will be able to earn more. So profitability comes into the picture. And since you can now sell it at a much higher price, this will drive you to sell more of that product that gives you more income. Okay, assuming that all the other factors are constant. That's why there is a positive or direct relationship. But let's just say, for example, this item that you're selling can no longer be sold at this regular price because there could be some other factors that drove customers to not anymore want it. And so probably this item can now only be sold at a lower price than before. So a lower price will drive you off as a seller. So since you cannot anymore earn much from that particular activity, the quantity supplied in that particular item will decrease. Okay? So buyers and sellers react differently to a change in the price. Buyers want a lower price, while sellers want a higher price, assuming that all the other factors are constant, or ceteris paribus. Firms offer supply to make profits. Higher prices boost the quantity supplied, and lower prices cut the quantity supplied. There are also other factors that influence supply. So just like demand, remember that there are factors that can shift your demand curve to the right or to the left. Your supply can also have shifts. Your supply curve can also shift to the right or to the left when influence, or when there are other non-price factors that will change. So let's talk about MC, or marginal cost, change in the cost. If the cost falls, or if the additional cost falls, what's going to happen? What does it uh, mean for the seller if the cost is going to fall down? or if the cost reduces, what does it signify? Assuming that all the other factors may remain constant. Let's say the price is still the same, but now the cost is lower. A lower cost would mean that the seller will have a higher profit margin, right? Because the cost will be deducted from the price. And so a lower cost would increase the supply because sellers are going to earn more from that lower expense. Please take note that the term that I'm using here is supply and not quantity supplied. The reason for this one is because we are not talking about a change in the price. If I mention that there was a change in the price, then we can say that there will be a change in the quantity supplied. But if the other factors will change, okay, please take note of that. Non-price factors, let's just like the cost, then the term that we will be using is supply, because quantity supplied is just one point in your, or one area in your entire supply curve. So when you say supply rises, it's not just, we're not just simply, this is a supply curve. It looks different from the demand curve. When you say supply rises, it doesn't mean that there is a movement in your supply curve from, let's say, from this point to this point. Okay, that's not a rise in the supply. A rise in the supply would mean that there is a shift in your supply curve to the right. Okay, whereas if you just simply say there was an increase in the quantity supplied, it's basically a movement from this point to this point. Okay, so it's a movement along the supply curve, and that particular movement along the curve is only caused by price alone. So when price changes, when price increases, QS increases, the movement is upward. But when price decreases, QS decreases and the movement is downward. But if the other factors will change, the movement is right to left, because it's not just QS that is changing, it's the entire supply. Now, what about this one? If MC rises, supply falls. So what does it have to do? What does it mean for the entrepreneur, for the seller? It means that they will have now to spend more for that particular item. And let's say the price is the same. So what does it imply? It means now that the seller will now be earning a lesser amount of profit margin with that particular increase in cost. And with a smaller profit margin, sellers will not be encouraged, they will not be pulled towards that kind of activity. So the supply will fall. The supply curve will shift to the left. Okay? So that's about it. Supply is determined by price, prices of goods, technology, and so on. As I have mentioned, if the change is with the price only, the movement is up or down along the supply curve. Okay? It's just like from this point to this point. It's just an example of a movement along the supply curve. But when the other prices change, and when the other, sorry, not prices, when the other variables change, like prices of goods, we're talking about cost here. Okay, not the price of that particular good, but the price of another good that you will use to produce that good. In other words, input cost. Okay, so input cost will determine supply. As I have mentioned earlier, if the marginal cost rises, the supply will shift to the left, it will drop. But if the marginal cost decreases, then there will be more supply. Another factor that will determine supply is technology. So just imagine if you are a factory, if you are a seller with a factory, and the technology becomes better, you have commissioned someone to do or to automate your production, of course you can supply more. But let's say if your technology is defective, it's obsolete, or it has been damaged, then the supply will be lesser, and so on. Okay, now about industry supply versus firm supply. Firm supply, firm is a company. Firm supply is determined by economic conditions and competition. So much like demand, uh, industry demand, firm demand, I mean, firm demand is also determined by economic conditions and competition. So the supply of a firm will be influenced or will be determined by certain economic factors, economic variables that will include investment in the economy, savings also, and economic growth, GDP, GNP, inflation, and competition also, the actions of the competitors, of the other suppliers. Industry refers to a group of companies in a particular field, and it is the horizontal sum, the sum of the firm supply. So how much I must supply in company A plus company B plus company C plus company D, that is the industry supply. The supply curve is the graphical representation of the relationship between the price and the quantity supplied. And just like what I mentioned last in our first video, the demand curve has three ways to present the relationship between price and QT. And that's very much the same also for the supply. So let's just imagine that we have here a supply schedule. So you have the price and you have the quantity supplied. So we'll be using the same numbers, 0 to 4. But in this case, this is quantity supplied. So we don't expect our QS to drop as the price increases from 0 to 4. We are actually expecting our QS to rise at the same time, because sellers will sell more if the price is higher. So let's just say nobody will sell if the price is 0. But if the price is 2, QS will be 10. If the price is 4, QS will be 20. Okay, so this is a supply schedule. It's the tabular presentation of the relationship between price and QS. If you will plot these points in a graph, you're going to create a supply curve. So we still keep this axis for the price, and this is for the Q. We will still start with 0, 2, and 4. And let's say this is 10 and 20. So 0, 0, please plot now. 2 and 10. And 4 and 20. Okay. And you just have to connect all points. Oops. Okay, so you just have to connect all the points. Okay, forgive me if I cannot hit the points because I cannot control the pen. But the idea there is to just connect the points to create your supply curve. Now your supply curve is upward sloping because of the relationship between the price and the QS, which is positive or direct. Now I want you to focus on the better looking supply curve. So you have here this one, a supply curve that shows that the quantity supplied is negative 42 million if the price is 0. So just imagine this is the positive y-axis and this is the positive x-axis. So if you're going to be stretching that up to that point, you will be having the negative quantities here. Okay, so negative 1, negative 2, blah, 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 until you're negative 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. So probably the negative 40 million is at the leftmost part. okay, which we cannot already anymore see because of the limited space. So it can be stretched up to that point. But of course, we don't have to show that. I'm just telling you that one, that the negative 42 million can be seen in this part if you're going to stretch it, okay? But we're just concerned with the width, with this one, the original curve. So the 2000 there is your slope, which means that, or every time there is a change in the price by 1 unit, the quantity supplied rather, will increase by 2000, not decrease. Okay, it's going to increase. Notice that the sign is positive. So if the price is gonna be 2 and you replace P with 2, so that's 2 times 2000, that's gonna be 4000. So an increase in the price, or if the price is going to be 2, the quantity supplied will increase will increase by 4000. Okay, and it's not yet the final answer because it has to be added to the 42 million. But of course, this is an automobile, so there is no $2 price for an automobile for sure. So it's gonna be a couple of thousands of dollars, so that you will not arrive at a negative answer for your quantity. Okay, and what about this one? This. So this is the inverse supply function. And what do you do with this? If you watch the first video, you will know that you just have to put your 2000p and transpose it to the left. Okay, this one. And keep the 42 million, 42m. And you have to deduct the Q because you are transposing this Q to the right. And to get the value of P, this is negative 2000 also. Divide both sides by negative 2000 so that you will have a P. So negative 42 million divided by negative 2000 is equal to 21,000. And then this has a coefficient of 1. So negative 1 divided by negative 2000 is negative 0.0005Q. And this is your inverse supply function. Okay. Now, as you can see, this 21,000, because of course the negative 42 million cannot be anymore seen, it's in this part. But if you want to know as to where you're going to start with your supply of curve given a certain function, okay, you start at this point, because that is your price if the QS is 0. If the QS is 0, the price is 21,000. And that is the start of your supply curve. Okay? Remember that if there are movement along the curves, if there are movements along the curve, the movements are being caused by a change in the price. So as I was saying, if this moves from here to here, probably there was an increase in the price, which drove the QS higher. If the movement is from this point to this point, okay, or this point, okay, there was a decrease in the price, which decreased the quantity supplied. But if there are other factors that will be changing, the movement will be either to the right, which is an increase in the supply, or to the left. Okay, much like what I discussed in the first part of the video, notice that we have 3 supply curves here, and the supply curves, okay, are, this is S1, S2, and S3. Now S1, notice that the interest rate for the automobile is 6%, And in S2, it's 8%. In S3, it is 10%. Okay, so the lower, if you can see, if the interest rate is lower, your supply curve is here at the rightmost part. And if the if the interest rate is higher, like in 10%, it is at the leftmost part. So which one do you think is the most favorable for the suppliers? Okay, the one wherein the interest rate is lowest. Okay, because you can see that there are more supply. Okay, at the prices, there are more supply if the interest rate is low. But if the interest rate is high, okay, the supply curve will shift to the left. So fewer ang iyang supply. Okay? Now, what if we just ignore these two and we focus on the only curve here, the S with supply curve 1 with 6% interest? Okay, the movement will be up or down if we're talking about this point here and this point here. So as you can see, if the price is 23, the quantity being supplied is only 4. But if you increase the price from 23 to 25, sellers will sell more of the particular item. They're going to sell 10. So the movement is upward. But if you're going to look at, if let's say we started with $25 and you drop to $23, the quantity supplied will drop from 10 to 4. Okay? So this is what you call movement along the supply curve, and this is caused by a change in the price. But if the other factors will change, such as the interest rates, such as technology, such as the cost of input, then the movement will be left or right. Okay, the interest rate will be treated also as a cost, diba? So probably we're talking about interest to like not buy, but not in investing on a car, but the interest on let's say uh, getting a loan to um, produce these cars, okay, to manufacture these cars. So you can sell more, produce more if the interest rate is lower because the cost is lower. Not it's not gali now you can produce, but you may be able to produce more with lower cost. And that's the end of part 2. 2 out of 3 videos. We will now move on to our third video. Thank you.